Okay, so you want to get into hobby electronics. What do you need? What are you going to do? What are you going to buy? What's the equipment? That sort of thing. Now, I've seen a bunch of videos on how to set up a bench, and you can watch those too. What I'm going to kind of get at is what sort of hobby electronics do you want to do? So, I mean, some of this type of electronics you can do doesn't even require a soldering pencil. So, for example, let's say you're just going to play with Arduinos. Well, really, the only thing you need for an Arduino and to play around with it is something like this. So we have a breadboard. This is a nano. This is a power supply. And this happens just to be a display I was playing with. Now, you can get all these parts, including the Arduino, more like actually an Uno like this, in a sensor kit. I happen to have a bunch of sensor kits, but Smazza puts out a pretty good one. So this is, for example, a 37-in-1 sensor kit. Now I happen to have a lot of other parts in here, but basically the idea of this, there's a whole pile of sensors in here that you can mess with. In fact, this is a combination of two sensor kits I rolled into one. But you can see here all the different sensors. And they even come with some discrete parts and stuff to all mess, including right there. Where is it? Does this one have the Uno in it? Maybe this one doesn't. But this one should have the breadboard in it. And as I said, you can get different ones. I was pretty sure this one had one of the Arduinos in it already. Yeah, so power supplies right there. Real-time clock, the CD with all the docks. Now, as I said, there are more than one of these things, and I did buy a couple of different ones. Here. This one here there, one Uno, a bunch of discrete parts, even a breadboard right here, power supply, a mini breadboard. This thing goes on top of the Uno. Now this kit here, basically you don't need a soldering pencil or anything like that to work it. You can do all this stuff in this kit without actually needing that tool. But I do recommend one tool that you have to begin with. And that is, of course, a multimeter. Now normally, you go out, you don't know which multimeter really to buy. So I will get my little bin of multimeters out here. My Uno back on the shelf. So this guy here is my multimeter. This particular one here is actually a capacitor meter. We'll get to that later. But this is your basic multimeter. You change the dial to what you want. In this case, last time I had it, I was on measuring current. Normally this lead here would actually be on this one right here. You only put it on that one when you want to measure something that's up to 10 amps. Right? So, as you can see, you turn it on, you get a digital display, turn it off, yada yada. Now, this particular one actually comes with a lock, so you can lock a measurement, and it comes with a light. Ooh, like so. Okay. Now both of these are manual multimeters, but they will do the job just fine. As long as you remember that if you're measuring, you know, at one point half a volt and you're in the low volt range, the next thing you decide to measure 25 volts, you better make sure you turn it, otherwise you could damage the multimeter. Now, if you have a bigger budget, you can then go to auto ranging multimeters. Now, those multimeters in the box are $20, $15, $30. And you can find them all over Amazon or AliExpress or whatever. This one, a decent auto ranging one, and I got this also because it has a thermistor. You can measure temperature. And this one was about $55 on Amazon. It's got a light and everything else, so if you turn it on like that, if you watch, the thing will better put it on voltage. It'll zero itself out. And you can go, let's see, light. There we go, light. So now when you get your multimeter, usually they'll come with one set of cables and probes, kind of like this. Poke, 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 poke. Yeah, so I went and got what they call a multimeter cable kit. Basically, it's just this pack. You open it up, it has several cables in it and ends, various ends. Now, two of the ends I really like using are not these pokey ones, so I take them off. Whoops, not like that. Here we go. And there we go. And instead I use these guys here. These guys, let me play with my little video for Linux test bench and change the brightness a bit. There we go. So I have these. I like them because you can clip them onto things, see, like so. But these little cable kits will come with a variety of ends like this, which is real handy. Now, reading material. So, if you're going to do the Arduino, you might want to pick up Getting Started with Arduino Sketches. Kind of like a little core Bible on this. This guy right here writes really good books. Lots of knowledge. And you simply have to just simply look at it. And they'll tell you what to do. They'll instruct you on how to use the sketch interface. They'll describe things. And that's for doing Arduinos. Now, if you're into Raspberry Pis instead, right, guess what? We have another make book, Getting Started with Raspberry Pis. Second edition. So, and this also does things like doing Arduino and the Pi together. Yes, you can use your Pi to actually program the Arduino. Now, all this also implies that you're sitting in front of a computer, because you're going to need one to program a Pi or load the OS initially onto the smart SD card or program the Arduino. So you're going to need that. Now let's say you want to build something raw. You want to learn, you know, what is Mr. Resistor here, or you know, these silly things. No, I can't even remember their name. Inductors. Let's say you want to learn about that sort of stuff, right? Then you're going to have to learn and get more stuff. Now, really, it's just a matter of getting more parts. So I'm going to just flip over to Chrome for a sec here, and I'll put it on. Okay, transition this there. So when we're in AliExpress, and I can just find an AliExpress page right here. Okay. Both Amazon and AliExpress, you can find 10 billion parts of discrete parts. I'm just going to open another tab after this for Amazon.ca. Okay. So if you were to type resistors up in front, resistor kit, for example, you'll see tons of this. 2,600 pieces. But believe it or not, let's just borrow this for a second and go to AliExpress. Let's see if it clues in on that I want resistors. Yes. So you saw on Amazon, they wanted $21.99, but you pay the premium of getting it very fast. I mean very fast. Prime, for example. But right here, $10.80. It's literally half the price. And free shipping, free shipping, free shipping, right? And you can root around. You could find 5,000 pieces at 220 values, for example, right? And they'll be cheap too. They'll be like $15, right? The biggest kit I actually found in here was something like this, but not in a box. But it was a box like this, and it literally was something like 45,000 resistors at 300 and something values, about 40 bucks. But you get the idea. These are all 2,600 kits, right? So you can do this also with things like capacitors, right? See, capacitor. So there's your ceramics right there, a variety of them. These are polyester film capacitors. These are electrolytics. Watch out for this. This is not a cap you can use on a breadboard. These are actually surface mount stuff. Nice caps, but we're going to be playing the through-hole electronics because that's the best stuff to use for breadboards. But you get the idea. See, 10 billion caps. Okay, toink, and they're cheap. Some of these kits, like this, for example, 25 values at 5 pieces per value, so 125. It's only $6.50. Or this one here, right? You're going to need both electrolytics and ceramics, and you're going to need kind of a wide range of them. So sometimes when you look at these, you need to look at how many values they put in the kit. So this one here, for $3.88, it's 1,000 pieces. So 50 values, 50 volts, and you can see it at 20 pieces per value. This I would consider a really good deal. And this is not the only stuff you would want if you're going to do this raw. So it goes on. You mean you have to get diodes. Right? So here's a pack of standard 1N style diodes, 1N 4000s, some 1N 5000 series. Also, you can see standard LEDs. If you're going to blow LEDs up, you go like this, you pick up 100 pack of multicolors. Right? Here too, more diodes, like you can see this. But don't do these because these are surface mount stuff. Now this type of diodes right here are Zeners. These are rectifiers. Right? You're more likely to want rectifier diodes first before you want Zeners. This is a cheap way to get RGB LEDs right here. 50 pieces for $1.58. Now the only caveat on AliExpress, it takes time. But if you're unwilling to wait, you can actually go seriously nuts. So let's see here on this one. We're looking at this. So this says here US. Now let's change our currency over here to Canada. Right? Okay, so now it's Canadian. See, normally estimated delivery time 30 to 50 days. These guys are pretty good. Yanwan, you can track. Okay? But if you don't want to do that, you click this little thing here. And let's say you want to reduce it to 15 to 30 days. Right? Well, you can go to AliExpress standard, pay an extra $5, $6 and get it quicker. But don't do these. No. Do not do FedEx, DHL, or EMS. Right? Because if you do that, right, you're losing out on the benefit of a $2.09 purchase. I suggest just wait. It took me more than 6 months to start stocking up parts, and I still have parts trickling in, depending when I discover I need them. So now let's get rid of a Chrome here for a sec. Now you set up your shopping list. Now you don't know exactly what you want to shop for. So one of the good books for doing electronics is these Make books. So this is volume 1. Okay. And this book is mostly analog. So you can see where my notes are in here. So basically what the book does is gives you an experiment, gives you a parts list here, and then it shows you what the breadboard is going to look like. It will also show you what the circuit diagram should look like, and it gives you an idea in the breadboard what's actually happening here. Whoops, off the screen. Here. So schematic here, breadboard here. And these books are really, really nice. So this guy here, as I said, is volume 1, mostly analog. This book here is mostly digital. So it discusses digital stuff. So this is logic and op amps. This is another op amp. But you get the idea. Now, if you're lucky enough to find them on eBay, remember our old store, Radio Shack? They used to have these series of books from Archer. It's actually a guy and a group of guys that actually wrote all these books. But they wrote these things. Okay? Big one too. There was a big one. But they wrote a whole pile of these books. So this is a digital logic circuits book. And yes, it looks like something you would have in school. So, and these are real cool. Not only that, you can use them to figure out what chips you need to buy. So for example, you want to play with 7400s. Well, there's the chip. You want to play, and they'll go through it here. So if you go like this, and they talk about logic here. Now this stuff here is like actually what happens in one of these chips. Okay, so here's all the logics. Here's other stuff. Here's a timer chip. Here's some op amps. These are the triangle things. So here's NAND gates. An AND gate, an OR gate. They're actually building all these gates off one chip, just the 7400. Right? But you can actually go out and shop for specifically NAND chips, OR chips, you know, this sort of thing like this. And it's pretty cool. So this is like basic semiconductors, formulas and tables. And I found a few on net. Now, good Googling is key, because you're going to go and Google a lot. Now let's go back to Chrome just for a sec. And I was looking at data sheets in another video. So get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of GitHub, get rid of that. So this is a data sheet. They are your friends. Okay? They're going to tell you exactly how a part works, what their limits are and everything. So for example, I was looking at 1N4007s, and I need to find their data sheet. So if you Google around, there, for example, is the 1004 data sheet. See, 1N4001 to 4007 from Fairchild. They're going to tell you everything about that diode, down to the nitty-gritty. So, now I also recommend, if you haven't done it already and you're planning, get an account on Texas Instrument, TI, because TI is just full of data sheets. Almost all those old yellow data books that they used to have and everything is all online in here. You can just look a part up. You can download the PDF of the data sheet. They even will have sample circuits to play around with to demonstrate. So like here. And you can actually build these. And they'll do the math too. You'll have to learn, I'm afraid, Ohm's law a little bit. And probably more later if you're really getting into it. But those are really important. Now you can go a harder core book. And I'll just take this out. So the Make books and these books are the easy books. Here is a harder book. So this is considered like literally the electronics Bible. So you can see it's just full of stuff. Lots and lots of diagrams explaining everything, including parts lists for things. So that's what these things actually are. You can actually look up the type and find out. It's kind of like a catalog with an instruction book. Now, this is the newest version of the book, 3rd edition. Now, there are sections in this book actually dealing with Arduinos and what they call embedded controllers and stuff. Right? You can actually find them in here toward the end of the book. Microcontrollers. So you can see that in here. The Arduino project, right? So now this book has a complement to it. It is this book. This is like the lab book. It's supposed to go together with this, the first book. Now, I haven't really read much into this book yet. I mean, as you can see, it is pretty heavy. So, now that's one set of heavy books. This is the other one. This is actually, again, Mr. Monk. Now, there's a 4th edition of this book. This is the 3rd when I got it, which is sad because when I got it, just like 2 months later, the 4th edition actually came out. But, oh well. And this one is pretty good. Later in the book, when you get really into the book, right, the math starts getting pretty heavy. So they'll talk about all sorts of things in this book. Now, I still think the art is probably the heaviest. This is second heaviest, and the others are fairly light. So you've got your parts, you've got a breadboard. You're going to need some basic equipment beyond your voltmeter. You're going to need to learn your color code for resistors. So if you've got the old school way of knowing it, has a mnemonic to remember what the colors are. Bad boys ravish our young girls, but Violet gives willingly, which is completely politically incorrect these days, apparently. So Smazza gives you these little cards, right? But I still have my old handy dandy Radio Shack resistor, capacitor, and inductor color codes. Now, the only problem with these guys here is they don't handle 5-band resistors. They only handle 4-band resistors. The Smazza card does talk about 5 and 6-band resistors in here. So, get my little other thing out. Yep, too low, too high. There we go, right about. Alright, there. Still have to get used to where things are. Come on, focuser. You can do it. There. So you can see first band, second band, third band multiplier, which is the thing. So that's for 5-band. Now, the interesting thing about this is let me just move some books out of the way here. This will drive you bonkers. The front of this book has a symbology index, but it also has how to read capacitors, standard values, how to read SMD stuff. But guess what? There's actually a 6-band resistor. Yeah, 5-band resistor with reliability, 5-band, 3-digit, classical 4-band. Yeah, it can go really nuts. The interesting thing is most of the resistors you'll buy now on AliExpress or Amazon are all 5-band resistors with like a tolerance of 1% or less on them. These guys here. Wow, see? Camera is really stupid about this. Yeah. Come on, camera, you can do it. Wow. There we go. So you can see these particular resistors aren't bad. You notice there's a gap between one of the bands and the rest of the bands? Well, that gap, the last one on the edge there, on your left, is actually the tolerance. The others are the colors. So you know how to read this. If we turn it around here, so now you can read it, right? Red, whatever, blue, whatever, and brown. Sorry, I can't read it on the screen very clearly. But you're going to have to learn that. And capacitors, you'll have to learn that. There are other niggly little parts you can pick up. So spare breadboards, so you don't have to rip projects apart. You just get them off Alley pretty cheap. I bought like 10 little square ones. Let's see if I have one up here. This size, right here. I bought like 10 of them for like 11 bucks. Like $1 a pop. Right? Now, our Monk guy, right? This is his proto board. Wow. Come on, autofocus. This is kind of going to annoy me after a while. There we go. So you can get these off Amazon as kits, and they're worthwhile getting. Usually you can pick up 5 boards and enough parts to build 2 of them, and then the 3 are spares, so you can actually make them later. What I did is I went to AliExpress and I ordered all these parts, and I just made all the rest. So I have like 10 of these boards with little feet on it. Makes great little work areas. There are other toys on AliExpress you can buy to play with, but the sensor kit stuff and everything usually will get you going. What else did I have here? Jumper wires. You can go to AliExpress or whatever and pick up lots of these. You're going to need them for your breadboarding. Now they come in male. Let's see if there's any in here. Yeah, there's one. Male, female. And you're going to find female to female too. Most of the time, male will be the ones you need. Unless you're going from an Arduino that has... See, this Arduino has the pins along with the holes. So you can do either one on these ones. Now, let's see. That'll get you going on the basics. Now, let's say you actually want to solder and you want to do all that sort of stuff. Now, first thing you're going to need is a basic soldering pencil. And I'm just going to get my old one. Now, contrary to popular belief, if you watch a lot of they'll tell you, oh, you have to have a Heiko, or oh, you have to have a Pace, or whatever. Blah, 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 blah. Buy what your budget can allow you for, but keep in mind, you really want 2 basic features. A, temperature controlled, adjustable, and B, standard tips that get used everywhere. Now, let me see if I can put this back on here, like so. So this is an AU soldering pencil, 469. The nice thing about this pencil, let's see if I can find that in here. No, they're over here. We have temperature control, but no display. This is your very basic model. Okay. I happen to have taken it apart because I had it on a shelf, but this goes right here like so to hold the pencil. And the pencil itself uses the same bits as the Heiko, basically the 800 series. So in Heiko, there's an 800 series and a 900 series, and they use two different styles of. So this is your heating element, your ceramic heating element. This usually goes on here like so. And these are your standard tips for Heiko. Now this bag is not what they originally came in, so I just got a variety pack of tips is basically what I did. Now there's your cone shape, pointy shape. These guys here, this one with the very point on it, this one with the point, that's a cone, that's a point, that's a point, that's a cone, that's a bent point. These guys here, they're not very useful actually, especially ones like this one here. The reason being is there's not enough heat surface. So if you touch this to a pad and you want to solder, you got nothing. You need a little area to actually work it better. So as you'll find on a lot of channels, they'll just say these are all junk tips. The tips that we're keeping are something like this with a wedge. And of course, a stupid autofocus. Or this is one you might use in SMD where you want to spread. And I thought I had one other wedgie tip in here. No, I don't. Yeah, I do. This one here is got a little bit of a wedge. I prefer a little bigger of a wedge. My wedge on here actually is covered in solder, but it's about a little larger than this wedge. So you put it in here, you put it all in here, see, like so, and you screw it all down. There you go. And I had no trouble with this pencil. It worked perfectly. I got it off Amazon on sale for 40 bucks. I then invested in, and I'll make my little mobile screen bigger here so you can see it. Phone cam, make you bigger. Okay, so I have that now. That's what's called a 2-in-1 rework station. So the item on the left is the heat gun, and then that's the pencil. And I happen to have my old Weller stand I'm using for it. I prefer it than trying to stick it in their little dinky plastic stand. So that's really what you want to get for a soldering pencil. Controllable, temperature, yada yada yada. Now, don't try to buy outside of your budget. Like, I mean, think about it in common sense. If you're going to occasionally solder, like you're not in like Rossman in a repairing apples day in and day out, you don't really need to buy that $150 soldering pencil. Yes, it's nice, but to do all the hobbyist stuff, this guy will do you just fine. Now, I wouldn't get any of the ones that plug directly into AC. Those usually don't have very good temperature control. They're usually fixed at one particular one. And some of the models I've heard, in order to change the temperature, you have to change a core in like a different tip set. which is annoying. This one, you just turn a knob. Like so. That one, the Sake, it actually has digital controls. So if you want to spend a little more money than 40 bucks, let's say around the 60 buck mark, 70 buck mark, then you can go and find Hakko knockoffs or find one of the ones that have a digital display on it. Now, the interesting thing about the Sake is there's a pencil for it. This. You can buy them separately, cheap. There's nothing special about these pencils. They just screw into the Sake, right there. You can see it in the overall picture. And you can get them dime a dozen on it. You can also get the base unit for soldering without the tip on AliExpress. Just little rectangles like this. Like that. And you just screw in the handle appropriate. Now, the 900 series Hakkos, they use a different tip system. They're not like this. So what they are is they're a complete heating element and tip and everything in one. They range usually about that long, and they go all the way in and you screw them down. Now you can go look at a Hakko 900 series and you can see this effect on them, right? Whereas all the other ones, and those tips, I've seen them range anywhere from $3 to about $8 a tip. Whereas these guys, you can buy a bag of these tips, all various ones, for like $5 to $8. So it's up to you. I'm just going to put all these back in the bag before they all roll off the desk and onto the floor. Okay. Now let me go get my little goodie thing for soldering. Some stuff you'll of course need. Solder. So I currently have a roll. This is known as a half kilo roll of 60/40. Right there, you can see it, 60/40. Rosin core. You don't get anything out without it. And it is what's known as 0.75 millimeter, or 0.30. Now this is pretty fine stuff, but I found if you go finer, and I do happen to have some, this stuff here. As you can see, this is hair fine. So let's see if the label tells, yeah, 0.3 millimeter versus 0.75 millimeter. This is pretty fine stuff. Now if you were doing surface mount, this might be applicable, but I found it was quite the useless roll. I happen to have another one here. Yeah, 0.3. I don't know why they give them in the kits as 0.3s. Now I have another roll here of fine air Kester. And this stuff here is actually 6337 solder. And it is actually, let's see if it has the number on it. 020 core 50 millimeter instead of 75.75. This is 0.50 millimeter. So this is also fairly hair, and I haven't used much of this stuff because it's pretty fine. Now, one thing I always find handy is my Pokey Stick. It's one end, it's the other end. This is very handy for when you have a problem. You also need this stuff. This is Desoldering Wick. 2 millimeter and another 2 millimeter, two of them. I also have this one, which is, well, Pure Imperial 0.5. So, but it's about the same size. So, Now, you really won't need that much solder, but if you go onto the Chinese market and AliExpress, you can actually get solder pretty darn cheap compared to North America. This is lead free. This is lead. Whoops. And if we look at it, it's 0.8 millimeter. Lead free. You can tell because it says SN 0.7 CU. So it's like 97% one element and like 3% another element here. But no lead in it. And this little rack I picked up to hold it all. Like so. Now the top roll, this is your standard, as you see, 63A, 0.8 millimeter. This is, the 63 is actually the one element, 6337. So this is very close to 60, 40. And this is lead solder. Now, you'll get guys swearing up and down on their grandmother's grave that lead-free is horrible solder. The issue with lead-free is you got to do it at the right temperature. I find that when I was using it, if I was too cold or too hot, it didn't work right. It was more picky. But lead solder wasn't as picky about its temperature. So, and I got this little rack to hold my soldering thing. Like so. Just put it down in the corner here again. Now, you'll get guys talking about this gizmo here, the sponge. As I saw, I had it in my tray right here. I never use this anymore. The reason being is it's been explained on a couple of sites, like EV blog and such, that it lowers the temperature of your pencil pretty good. Alright, every time you swipe on it. Then it has to reheat up again. I mean, it does make clean. Your better bet off is brass wool. That's what this stuff is. So you stick your pencil in here, and that cleans the tip. Now, another thing I found is they usually tell you when you're soldering, you know, you have to tin your tip. Okay, fine. But why waste solder tinning your tip and getting the vapor from the burning resin up your nose? So I have this instead. This is a tinning tip tin. Basically, it's just you stick your pencil in and you tin your pen without any resin or rosin in it. I actually have another one of these that's actually the opposite. It's actually resin instead of tinning. But I rarely use it. These are my ends for my air gun. Some screwdriver prying kits for opening things up. Some of the tools, as I said, the Pokey device, of course, cutters. You should have a screwdriver. You probably want to open things up. What else? Oh, helping hands is what they're referred to as. It helps you hold things. So this actually has 4 more arms for it, but I took them off because I didn't really need them. And I got shown this, you know, a long time ago from another guy. These are just little flat copper alligator clips. They're great for holding parts in. Now, there's another electronics guy on the net, and he happens to use sticky gum, a kind of a reusable gum. He tends to use that to hold parts on boards. I use this because it doubles up for two things. One, it holds the part, of course, but the other one, it acts as a heat shunt. So if you were going to be soldering something like transistors, and I'll get some here. So here's some spare transistors. These guys here are your standard TO92s, I think are what they're called. Problem with them is that you can fry them really easily when soldering with them. So what you can do is when you put it in a board, and I happen to have one of these little perf boards. So imagine you're sticking this on here. So, like so, like so, like so, like so. Okay? Well, what you can do is you can use the copper on one side, for example, to hold, and the other ones upstairs to hold. Like so. So that when you're soldering, you could solder this connection, for example, to get started. I have it flipped, it should be on the other side, but you get the idea. And this will shunt the heat away from the thing while you solder. So if you happen to hold your pencil too long on this, guess what? You don't fry the transistor. That's why I like these little guys. And yes, you can get them off, you guessed it, AliExpress. Okay, those are really meter, some helping hands, your solder, some basic tools like these clips, right? Side cutters, right? That's all you need to get going in soldering. Now, I think I'll explain this in a lesson on how to solder more than anything else. Don't get squeamish about using lead solder. In order to vaporize lead and vaporize tin, you will need to run the temperature up to something like 1200 Celsius before that actually happens. These soldering pencils probably top themselves off at 450, maybe even 500 at most. So you aren't ever vaporizing lead solder. The smoke you see from solder is from the resin core, the rosin core, right? Yes, you're sniffing pine needles, because believe it or not, pine needles are used as a ingredient for resin or rosin. Resin, rosin, potato, potato. So now have good lighting, and you can, I'm just using a little fan that a USB fan that I plug into to suck air away from me. So as I'm soldering, the smoke goes away. You can get yourself a fume extractor, but that'll take up more bench space. And if you're like me, I'm tight on bench space. There's not enough room to hold everything in here. Right? So now one other optional part you might want, and I really like this from who was it again? Let me just check here. So Mr. Carlson's lab had a really good soldering tutorial, and one of the parts of it was flux. Now flux comes in many varieties and levels. So if you actually go to the Worldwide Wiki and you look up flux, there's actually categories of the stuff, from very mild washable flux to highly corrosive stuff that'll eat right through a board if you don't clean it off correctly. When you go and buy solder, you know that stuff you see in Home Depot or whatever for doing copper pipes with the big Weller gun or the blowtorch? No, don't ever use that stuff. the rosin inside the stuff is so strong. It's like an organic high-end rosin. It'll eat through boards. Don't use it. It's not designed for that. Instead, I picked up this stuff. Basically, it's a washable clean flux. And I picked up this dispenser bottle. So you go like this, and that helps you give some flux. So if you have trouble making a connection, you spread a little of this around, and voila, it works like a charm. Oh, what else do we have? You might want some spool of standard gauge wire, you know, like anything from 22, 24 or so. By the way, the smaller the number, the thicker it is. So don't go out and buying 2 gauge wire. It'd be like that. It'd be huge. I think that's it for this. You're going to find it'll take a while to get all the equipment together. I'll do another one with more advanced stuff. Like I picked up a desoldering station, you know, the 2-in-1 rework station. I have things like an oscilloscope, but that's not really needed until later. So let's end this and